Hi friends, how are you doing today? So I realized that I haven't done a let's search together kind of video in a while. So I'm gonna do one of those today. And I thought that maybe I'll start with something that I got in my suggestions box. Speaking of which, thank you so much for all of your kind messages that I received in the box. And I also linked it below in case some of you weren't aware of my anonymous suggestions box. There was a comment that said, can you talk about pottery around the Ming Dynasty and why they're so famous? Shamefully, I actually didn't know that pottery around the Ming Dynasty was particularly famous. To be honest, I know very little about pottery. And so I thought that maybe I would start with a search about Ming Dynasty pottery and see where that leads us to. Okay, so I've typed in Ming Dynasty pottery in the search bar, and I am searching for books. Hopefully there's going to be an online book. Right, so there's one called The Wares of Ming Dynasty, and it's an online source, and it's available on Google Preview. And let's just go to the introduction, see what's there. Let's read a little bit. In a long vista of Chinese history, which stretches back in an unbroken line far beyond our era, the Ming Dynasty seems relatively near and modern. The supreme periods of the major arts had passed. The great poets and painters of the Tang and Song dynasties were already invested with the halo of antiquity. And though there were still names which added luster to the annals of Chinese art, the Ming Dynasty is best known to us for the development of one of the minor crafts, the porcelain of Jingdezhen, with which the name of China is universally associated, reached its full maturity under the Ming, and later generations had little to add to its development except increased production and the inevitable perfection of detail. Chinese writers and collectors of after times speak of the Ming porcelains with deep respect, and some of the Ming reigns have been unanimously voted the classic periods of porcelain manufacture. So this introduction confirmed for us the fame of Ming Dynasty porcelain. And even though I know next to nothing about Chinese porcelain, the name Jingdezhen does sound very familiar. If I remember correctly, I know it in the context of being a famous place of manufacture for export porcelain. So next, I'm going to Google Jingdezhen porcelain, and inevitably it's going to lead me to Wikipedia. Right, so Jingdezhen porcelain, or Jingdezhen taoci, is Chinese porcelain produced in or near Jingdezhen in southern China. It may have produced pottery as early as the 6th century. By 14th century, it had become the largest center of production of Chinese porcelain. From Ming period onwards, official kilns in Jingdezhen were controlled by the emperor, making imperial porcelain in large quantity for the court and for the emperor to give us gifts. It's produced a great variety of pottery and porcelain for the Chinese market, as well as Chinese export porcelain. Its best known high quality porcelain wares have been successively Qingbai ware, let's see what that is, in Song and Yuan periods, blue and white porcelain from the 1330s, and the family rose and other familial colors under the Qing dynasty. Okay, so Qingbai ware in the Song and Yuan dynasties. Qingbai ware is white with a blue-greenish tint. It was mainly in the Song and Yuan dynasties, which were before the Ming dynasty. And let's see, maybe blue and white porcelain. The advent of Ming dynasty in 1368, blue and white ware was shunned for a time, but came back to prominence with the Xuande emperor, and again developed from that time on. Yeah, so I think like at this point, I'm very curious to see like what these pieces actually look like. You know, now all we've got is there's this famous city for making porcelain, and it seemed that in Ming Dynasty, you know, it became like the production scaled up. But I mean, it's possible that the idea that Ming Dynasty porcelain is particularly famous is a combination of perhaps a few things, right? Like one, it seems that export porcelain was a really big thing in Ming Dynasty, right? I mean, I'm not sure whether the West is aware of, say, Song Dynasty pottery or Liao Dynasty pottery. Another thing could be like, you know, Song, Liao, Tang. You know, even as this introduction to this book kind of said, right? You know, the Song and Tang dynasties are kind of described as the supreme periods of the major arts. So, you know, perhaps the achievements in these kind of major arts, such as paintings, overshadowed the achievements in the Song or Tang or Liao dynasties in this area of pottery, right? So I'm still not quite sure why Ming Dynasty pottery is particularly famous. I know next to nothing, as I said, about Chinese pottery, and so I'm not so sure that Ming Dynasty pottery is the most famous. But actually, doing the search has sent me down a couple of rabbit holes, and I'm actually now very interested in doing deeper dives into history of pottery in China in general. And I want to first start with just sampling maybe randomly examples of pottery from millennia of history in China, and maybe you can pick for yourself which time period had pottery that you like the best. And I am linking you to the video in which I do that, and I hope you enjoy it, and I hope that in this video perhaps I provided some useful search terms in case you want to do deeper dives into Ming Dynasty pottery and perhaps whether or why it was particularly famous. Thanks for watching and see you next time.